Welcome into Raptors today. Sherm Hamilton, the principal, Paul Jones, Akil Augustine, coming off a late night of action for the Toronto Raptors where they fall to the Phoenix Suns 114 to 106. We're going to talk about the performance of the Raptors because, you know, for 75-80% of this game, gentlemen, it looked like the Raptors were in it, building momentum, hopefully moving to 3-1 on this 7-game road trip. But at the end of the night, they fall to 2-2. So I'm going to ask, what were the key possessions down the stretch, especially in that last 6 minutes that kind of got this game away from the Raptors, Jonesy?
To me, I saw a team, Monty Williams' team, that really kind of played traditional basketball down the stretch.
Old school.
Yeah, they used DeAndre Ayton. He had a monster game, 22 and 13, and it was a classic case of we have a big guy and you don't. And plays like this, jump hook in the lane. They went with that one play. There's a screen and roll down the middle. They went with one play where he and Mikal Bridges went dribble handoff coming up the lane and to the top of the key, and then let's see what Toronto does. Does Bridges get into the lane? Does he get a shot? Or does he look for Ayton? And he looked for Ayton. Ayton scored, and when Bridges got to the hoop through penetration, the rotation allowed Ayton to be loose on the glass. So I saw Monty Williams' team down the stretch playing, old school, classic basketball with a big guy. We have a big guy. Here's what we're going to do. And whatever you do, we're going to have an answer to it.
Yeah, I saw the Raptors kind of falter to some of the things we've seen all season long. Offensive rebounding. They got a couple of big offensive rebounds down the stretch that led to big buckets. Offensively, really not in moments figuring out how they wanted to attack. And it kind of hurt them in those. It's the sequencing of when it happens too, right? And I just think that, one thing that happened early was Mikal Bridges got it going in that first quarter.
Huge game for him.
And then there was a stretch in the fourth quarter again during that time where they ran the same play.
Yeah.
And he got 2 big buckets in there. So, there's pockets of the game where, especially down the stretch where the Raptors were unable to finish a defensive possession with the rebound, and then offensively some poor trips down the floor. And then now you have to deal with a hot Mikal Bridges and DeAndre Ayton doing what he's doing, and now you're just kind of out of your rhythm that you had throughout the majority of the game.
The two that you're talking about, Bridges hit like an elbow jumper on one side of the lane.
Left and going
then he
right.
hit one going right, and it was like, okay, now what are you going to do? And as soon as you do something, they're one step ahead of you with the counter.
29 points on 12 of 19 from the floor for Bridges. Huge night for him without, of course, Devin Booker, their all-star perennially available. Let's talk about the Toronto Raptors, who are without OG Anunoby. They're on the West Coast. They're traveling, playing at a different time. And, of course, a big part of their bench in the starting lineup. How much was fatigue going to be credited with what the Raptors weren't able to do coming down the stretch? Because, they had a rough first half. In that third quarter, they kind of brought themselves back into the game, Sherm.
Yeah, and we've known the Raptors to be the cardiac kids at times where they chase teams down after giving up a bit. But I just don't, for the Raptors, that push they made in the third quarter was filled with a lot of good things. Yeah. They jumped out and they went right after Phoenix.
Shout out to Fred VanVleet.
100%.
Yeah.
Gary Trent knocked down the 3. Fred did a great job orchestrating offense. Scotty Barnes was involved in that little push there. And I thought that was a template for what they needed to do over an extended period of time. It's tough to do that, though.
Yes.
It's tough to expend all that energy on both sides of the basketball consistently for 24 minutes of a second half. So I think that, they might have run out of steam, but you got to tip your hat to Phoenix as well. You can't just put it on one side. And what the Raptors did in the third quarter, Monty Williams and the Phoenix Suns figured out a way to neutralize that stuff and start to really put their imprint on that fourth quarter. And the Raptors didn't have a response for that.
I thought the way the Raptors came out in the third quarter, like you look at it, it was 62-53 at halftime. And with the kind of scoring that we're seeing now in the NBA, that was more of a kind of what we're used to 5, 6, 7 years ago kind of score. The game was not really up and down, racehorse, windshield wiper. It was kind of more of, traditional basketball in a sense.
Well, Chris Paul probably appreciates that at the point of his career he's in.
Same with a guy like Fred, right?
Yeah.
But they come out in the third quarter, and as both you guys remarked, Fred picks up the pace.
Yes.
And the Raptors stopped turning the ball over. They had as many turnovers in the first half as they normally do in a game. They stopped turning it over in the third quarter, picked up the pace, and all of a sudden they got Phoenix playing the way they wanted to. And as Sherm said, in the fourth quarter, Monty said, hold on a second. We don't want to play like that. Don't get enticed into playing like that. And they got it back to their kind of style of play, their system, and that's where they took over.
All right, well, the coaches make the decisions that change the momentum of the game. Right now, we hand it over to Coach Nick Nurse, who's got his work cut out for him. He tries to make the most of this West Coast swing.
Guys, certainly put yourselves in a position to win the game and just even get a couple of plays made down the stretch. I guess the Paul 3 and then the offensive rebound. Just sort of worn out by that time?
I don't think so. I think you're right. We were right there. I really liked it. Even in one of the last timeouts, I thought we were down 3 with 7 to go or something, and I was like, I really liked the feel of the game. I thought we were doing a lot of good things at both ends, and I just, again, I didn't think it bounced our way very good. I mean, we do end up getting hurt on 2 or 3 offensive rebounds down the stretch, for 2 of them for threes, and it's too bad. I mean, I really had a good look on one of them, and there was just a collision. Like, Malachi was right there for that long rebound, and he turned around and ran right into, like, Wainwright just wiped him out of the play, and it bounced right to Lee, and he nailed it. And then the last one was the same, really long rebound, right out to Paul. And then we had a chance again. We had a pretty good look at a 3 to tie it right back there. Goes in and out. So again, I think we were playing really hard, playing really well. Obviously could have done a few things and shored up the rebounding, but just didn't really bounce our way there when we really needed it to. And there was, again, I give them credit, they made a lot of hustle plays. They threw in a lot of stuff that the ball was loose and tipped and knocked away, and they scoop it up and throw in a bank shot or whatever. But they did make some big baskets down the stretch, especially Bridges when they needed them. He made a couple pull-up jumpers to kind of keep them rolling.
Again, look at shots, it's like 50%, made 11 threes. The offense seems to be really clicking along. Do you like what you're seeing start to finish? I know turnovers in the first half killed you.
Yeah, really uncharacteristic, especially to start the game for us. I think we had 11 at the half. Like, that's a game's worth for us. And again, we do a much better job in the second half there. I did love the way we started offensively. I thought, again, obviously the turnovers, I thought we were a little stagnant, but we certainly picked that up. We started cutting in free in space and making a few dump-offs and kick-outs, et cetera, after kind of about a 6-7 minute start where I didn't think it was very good.
A bright spot for the Toronto Raptors of recent has been the performance of Precious Achiuwa. Of course, the bench has been, something that the people we've talked about all year. Unfortunately, he wasn't part of that bench squad last night as he was with the starters, the main group. A strong performance. Let's talk about him over the last 5 games. Now that he's kind of finally found his footing and his ability to contribute consistently with this group. Looking at the numbers, Jonesy, I'll start with you. What about Precious in this stretch? What has he found? Because a lot of it is health. A lot of it is health. But also finding the things that work and an identity within the larger group.
Maturity, to me, Akil, has been that's the big word I would use. I mean, you look at those numbers. He's averaging a double-double over the last 5 games, basically 17 and 10. And I've said this before. Think back to last year at this point. People had a lot of questions about what Precious was doing. Why is he taking that? Pass the ball. Don't dribble it. Precious, nice shot. That's the way his game was last year. And he was a young player with all this ability, searching for a way to use it and use it productively. He's just grown by leaps and bounds, and his maturity. I saw him last night. I watched him last night, over the last few games, as a matter of fact, pass up shots that he would have taken last year that would have been questionable shots, make or miss. I just feel like he's more comfortable. He's more defined in his role. He understands what to do. He understands where he's going to contribute. And I think his growth has been massive. And remember, it's only his 3rd year in the league.
Yep.
People keep, it's only his 3rd year. And the first year he played in Miami, And you know he was in a box there. Like, don't you think Miami'd love to have this guy playing the way he's playing right now? And unfortunately, or fortunately for Raptor fans, he's in Toronto. But Sherm, I've been impressed with his growth, his mental growth, his feel for the game over the last year.
Yeah, I look back at a player, Serge Ibaka, when he came to the Raptors. And when he came, he was coming from Orlando, and he wanted to be viewed as an offensive player. And you could see he was trying to just look for offense. That was the half a year that he got here. The next year, he started to understand where his shots were coming from. He understood he's a part of it, but it has to happen a certain way, and he'll get to shine. And Serge became more confident, more comfortable, was more patient, and more importantly, was more disciplined in his offensive approach. That's Precious. Precious comes in, he got let out the box out of Miami, and everybody in Toronto saying, express yourself. Well, there's pros and cons with that. The con was, as Jonesy was saying, Precious would try to do too much too quickly and not really survey. Now he has a disciplined approach. There's an understanding, a maturity. There's also the ability to impact the game in different ways because he has more tools in the toolbox now. So he doesn't have to just depend on put my head down and go. He can see what's happening and he can make a decision and make the right decision more often than not. The word that comes to mind is discipline. And it's self-discipline because he understands there are shots he could take, but there are shots he shouldn't take. And that, to me, now is how he's going about his business. And now the rest of the game just looks so much more fluid, more smooth. It fits. It's in place. He's not trying to do too much. And his team is benefiting from that.
All right, let's stick with Precious Achiuwa and sprinkle in a little Scotty Barnes because this is a young core for the Toronto Raptors as they move forward, whatever happens. Let's talk about these two and their compatibility. What have you seen in this duo that allows them to kind of work together? Because Scotty's kind of interchangeable, but he really enjoys playing alongside Precious, Sherm.
There's an energy there. I mean, both these guys are young. They play at a high pace. They've both got big motors and different skill sets, obviously. Scotty is such a good passer. His vision is really, really, really good for a young player. And Precious can play off of movement. He can play behind the defense. He can play with the ball in his hands. But both of them defensively do a lot of good things with their size, their length, their athleticism.
Something the Raptors don't have a lot of.
100%.
Right.
So when you talk about from a defensive perspective, there's the obvious. Offensively, they both can impact the game in different ways. And when you talk about playing with pace, which is what the Raptors want to do, both these guys fit the bill. Both of them can run. Both of them can play at a high tempo and make decisions. And I think when you talk about the future of the Raptors, you look at these two guys and their ability to impact the game from shooting to passing to scoring to rebounding to defending. That's the mold that the Raptors have tried to build.
They look like they epitomize positionless basketball.
Oh, yeah. That's the model. With
Right?
that
And that's where the NBA is going. That's what Toronto has been about. Give me a couple guys that epitomize that in Toronto more so than Precious and Scotty.
Super switchable.
And then the two of them together developing a chemistry. It's like when you go to the park and you're playing 2-on-2 with a guy that you know. He knows you, you know him. Doesn't matter who you're playing against. It's about you and not them. And I think from the clips we saw there's an understanding, a chemistry, a kind of a mental telepathy developing between Scotty and Precious. I mean, you look at the way they look for each other on the inside, the way the lobs, one's in the dunker spot, the other one's looking for them, all of those things. And that's growing as the two of them continue to get a chance to play together.
All right, well, right now we're going to check in with the players, so we hand you out to Chris Boucher and Fred VanVleet to talk about the Raptors' performance after the Phoenix Suns game.
First 5 minutes, I guess, of the fourth quarter, and we're able to kind of keep the game in control. What was your mindset in that stage of the game with the it's a pretty tight game?
I'm just trying to hold the lead or improve it. Obviously, the bench been trying to support the starter as much as we can and with different scheme and all that. So I think everybody was focusing on that and trying to get the rebounds and the loose balls and trying to do something to help the team, obviously.
You haven't been taking a lot of threes lately, but
Yeah.
the percentages are kind of creeping up the last few weeks.
Mhm.
So, what's the story there?
Just trying to do the right play, obviously. Take the open ones. We got a lot of shooters on this team. We got a lot of guys that could score, so I'm just trying to find my role in there. And obviously, I really always thought that I was a good shooter, so especially when I take the open one. So I'm just trying to take the open one, not shoot the ball too much, and focus on the right things.
How are you feeling overall about the offense coming together as a plate? Are you feeling like it's improving?
I mean, ups and downs. I think we're getting better. We're finding the open guys and stuff. We're definitely shooting the ball a lot better than when we started at the beginning of the year and all, and that's always a good sign. But like I said, we just gotta find a way to put a whole game together, defensively and offensively. And usually when we do that, we're good. Like I said, we had laps where we were playing really good, and it shows. And the times that we didn't, then they made us pay for it.
First half, I think you guys had 11 turnovers. It's obviously super uncharacteristic. Anything you felt or saw differently, or just some sloppy play?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm always give credit to the opponent. They're a tough team, and they got guys that play hard. They were pretty keyed, and I thought we just started a little sloppy, a little loose, and some of those were unforced, uncharacteristic. Just didn't have that same punch right from the get-go. Worked ourselves into it, but we finished with a 13, so we were able to get that under control, but definitely way too many in the first half.
Okay. So, Fred, you guys had a great third quarter.
Yeah.
Got yourself into the game, and then the bench kind of bridged it there, more or less.
Yeah.
And then that last 6 minutes, I mean, the offense just dried up for you guys. What was going on there?
I mean, they were scoring. You know what I'm saying? I'm always on the opposite end of that. You know what I mean? I don't know how many fourth quarter shootouts you see, from us these days. So we get some stops. We're in good shape there. But, we dries up. They don't dry up. It's tough. So they threw some shots in that, we needed to miss. And got some good looks offensively. I know I certainly had a lot of good looks late. Generated some good shots. So, that's, that'll hurt, tonight when you go to sleep. But we fought hard, we competed, but give them credit. They outplayed us there the last 6 minutes to win the game.
Does it feel in general like the offense is in a better place than it was a month ago, 6 weeks ago?
Yeah, I think so. I think just in general, everything we're doing just feels better. I think that we're competing at a high level. Execution is, hit or miss sometimes. Can get a little smarter and a little more keyed in and consistent, but we've been competing, we've been together, we've been communicating, and we've been getting better and growing as a team. So you got to be able to take the positives out of some of these situations and just keep building. Obviously, you'd like to win and learn while winning, but it doesn't always go that way. So, we got some games here left in this road trip we got to get. And, we'll be able to go back home feeling good about ourselves if we can take care of business going forward.
Big shouts out to Fred VanVleet for the outfit. I'm not a huge fan of the recent trends in NBA fashion, but that is a sweater I can stand by. All right, shouts out to B.I.G.
It's your generation, man.
Yeah, exactly, right? I'm dating myself here, but the All-Star starters, gentlemen, have been announced. What are your thoughts on the switch in format? Jonesy, I'll start with you. Instead of the pre-draft where they announce who's on whose team, they're going to do it prior to the game on game day. You loving it?
Yeah, I do. I mean, people are saying, well, how do you know about the uniform? So you make one of each color for the guy or whatever it is.
Makes the jersey swap easier after the game.
Yeah,
It's not like they don't make enough of them anyway.
Exactly. And I mean, my thinking is when you go to the park to run on Saturday, you don't pick the team on Thursday, right? The NBA All-Star Game has always been called the world's best pickup game, and you have to be invited. So when you're at the park, it's like, I got him, I got him, I got you, I got him, let's run.
I came with my 5, so I'm in dispute.
Well, how often do you hold a court?
On my court, we held the court.
Okay.
On my court, I had Vi on my team.
On your court. I don't know, it's maybe some hometown refereeing there, but I like the format.
Yeah.
I think it throws some things into the works for people. Like, I mean, you think of the recent trend in sports around gambling.
Vegas hates it.
Yeah, how do they set a line, right? Or when do they set the line?
In-game bets.
But that being said, I like the format of guys standing there and they're right in front of you, and you pick your team.
Couple things. Number one, I think it's going to be very interesting to see who gets picked last.
Yeah, always.
In the moment, right there.
Yeah, not
you're
on
the
paper.
last pick,
Not
and-
on paper.
And how much venom that individual is going to have throughout the game. The second thing is, when you're picking teams, there's a loyalty in that moment right?
Yeah.
You get picked. You pick me, Akil. We're riding.
Yep.
Jonesy, you don't pick me, I'm coming after your neck. And that in-moment kind of energy, I think it's great to have. I think it's awesome. And you know what? We're going to find out who likes each other.
Yeah.
We're going to find out who doesn't like each other. And I'm okay with that.
Tampering. Look who's a free agent, look who picks who, and then let the tampering start.
Well, I think the NBA's done a great job of turning the NBA All-Star Game from an afterthought about the weekend to kind of the primary focus. We saw what happened at the end of game last couple of years. So the event's on the rise. It's coming up. It's overtaking the dunk contest, which has taken a step back in recent years. But now let's talk about the next opponent for the Toronto Raptors, and that is the Utah Jazz. Potentially Lauri Markkanen, an afterthought in NBA circles, potentially an NBA All-Star. How do you handle Lauri Markkanen, a player who wasn't really high up on the scouting chart prior to this year? Sherm, what do you need to take away from this young man?
There was never question about his talent.
Yeah.
He was always a talented big guy. He got injured. They questioned how physically tough he was. He's changing all of that this year. He's letting you know that, he put some muscle on. And sometimes it's just the system and the environment. You get to a spot where Chicago didn't work, Cleveland didn't work, he lands in Utah, and now you're looking at a guy who seems like he's at home. He knows who he is, he's come into himself, he believes in who he is. I mean, that's a 10-point increase in average over last season. So he's definitely found whatever teams that traded up on him, what they thought he could be. But the interesting thing about him is he is kind of what you want, the 7-foot, handle the ball, can shoot it, can play inside,
the
can
prototype.
play outside. The versatility that he has is exactly what GMs drool over. And now it just took him a few years to get it going. So I think you got to be physical with him still. I think you got to really get into him, attack him on the other end. But the kid's playing at such a high level. He's falling into that class of he's going to get his numbers.
Yep.
You just got to make it difficult for him.
It's a confidence thing, too, with him. And you think about him being drafted number 7 overall. Again, the quintessential idea of potential, we're seeing it, right? You look at him and you draft him and you got to wait for him to develop. 1 year at Arizona, comes out, is not, as Sherm said, is not necessarily in the right spot. He's working at his game. He's obviously motivated. And now, after 5 years, I mean, back in the day, you used to see a guy who played 3-4 years of college grow a little bit as a person, mature physically a bit, learn the game. The NBA game is a whole different game from college or FIBA or anything else. And now you've got a young man who's 1 year removed from his prom after a year at Arizona, comes to play with grown men. It's going to take him some time. He's bounced around. He's finally in the right spot. And he's been taking all of this learning with him, and he's maturing now.
And he's healthy.
He's 25 years old. Now, I mean, it used to be, when's a guy in his prime after he played 4 years of college, between 27 and 32? You're trying to speed that up now because you're picking guys earlier. And he's an all-star. We were talking about it off mic here. Who's going to rival him? There's a few, but he's right up there when you talk about a potential most improved player. And the Raptors, fortunately, have body types, physiques, that can rival him defensively.
The two guys we were just talking about.
Right. So I'm looking forward to that and see how they play him and see if they can knock him off the little confident pedestal of confidence that Markkanen has going.
From the 7th pick in the 2017 draft to the 22nd pick in the 2022 draft, we're talking Walker Kessler now, a throw-in in that debacle of a trade that was the Rudy Gobert deal that I think is still the worst trade in NBA history. But let's talk about Walker Kessler, a name not too many casual NBA fans know about, but one of the top blocks guys in the league. And he's a formidable force. So how do we handle a Walker Kessler? How do you challenge him?
You know, Akil, and I'll go back to what we talked about with Markkanen. It's where you're drafted, who you're with, and the system that you get into. And this kid has landed in the right place after the trade. Obviously, Utah saw something in him that guy fits with us. And you look at his defense. You talked about one of the top shot blockers. Kid plays with a lot of energy. He's got a good understanding of his role within the Jazz system. And I love what he's doing right now. He's more than an ample replacement right now in my eyes for what they traded in Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, you see the clips that we're just looking at. He does a great job of moving his feet, keeping his hands up, and not bringing them down to foul. For big guys, that is so difficult to do, especially when you're trying to block shots. His numbers won't wow you, but this is a 2020. He had a 2020 game already in this league.
Yep.
He can get after it. And
The system.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And he's a guy that you're going to have to be aware of when you're attacking the basket. You're going to have to be very, very cognizant of where he is on the floor. And also, on the other end, he's good. He's got great hands. He can catch. He can finish around the basket. So you see the template and the foundation of a young man who has a lot of potential. But I was really impressed at how well he moves his feet laterally. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect him to move that well laterally, and he does a great job of that.
Well, it'll be the Raptors and the upstart Utah Jazz coming up Wednesday night, 9 p.m. start. So that means you can get to bed a little bit earlier. Of course, Sportsnet family of networks will have all the game calls for you, and that does it for us here on Raptors Today. For Sherm Hamilton and Paul Jones, I'm Akil Augustine. See you next time.